Hello, my name is Lesley Nneka Arimah, and I am the author of the short story collection, What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky.
And what inspired you to write What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky?
I wrote the collection to essentially showcase and encompass my literary interests, and so the stories in the collection range from straight-up realism to magical realism, fantasy, science fiction, etc.
And why do you think there's a sudden surge within this genre at the moment with African writers?
I think it's actually a global phenomenon because it's happening in other countries as well. Like within the last 10 years or so, there has been a resurgence of speculative fiction in the literary world. And I don't know why. I mean, I know what speculative fiction can do. You can use speculative fiction to comment on the world and on humanity in a way that is expansive. For example, I have a story where, that sort of deals with the idea of grief and the question that we have when we lose someone that we love and we say, oh, if I could just have one more day with them. And that is not a statement that can be tested in the real world. And so why not have a world in which someone that you love who is deceased coming back as possible? And now let's see what happens.
Tell us about the Caine Prize and your involvement with it.
Yes, so I am one of the shortlisted writers for the 2019 Caine Prize, and my short story for the Caine Prize is Skinned. And the premise of the story is that it takes place in a world where women are not permitted to wear any clothing unless they are married.
And how did you come up with this idea?
I came up with the idea after speaking to, while speaking to a friend of mine, and we were both in Nigeria, and we were talking about how, she had been sort of considered strange by her family her whole life, and it was always told to her in warning that, oh, you're never going to get married if you don't, whatever, fix this strangeness of yours. And she did get married, and got married like her, with being her entire strange self. And all of a sudden, like, no one in her family has a problem with her strangeness anymore. And so we spoke about how, speaking metaphorically, how being married essentially gave her cover to be who she really was without anyone interfering. And so that was sort of it was many months later before the story came from that, but that was like the genesis.
And what does it mean to be, involved in the Caine Prize?
The purpose of the Caine Prize is to reward and to advocate for African short stories. And so, leading up to the announcement of the prize, there is a week of events where they essentially introduce the shortlisted writers to the public, to agents and editors and publishers, things like that, and essentially to ensure that they have a path out after the Caine Prize towards publication.
Okay, and where are you going to continue to write short stories, or are you going to write novels? And how do you see yourself as a writer? How do you define it?
The short story is my first love. I say first love, even though I actually wrote a novel first, but short stories made me fall in love with writing. And I love writing my novel, but short stories, there's just something about that compressed space and having to essentially pull off an entire world in that compressed space. And it's an exercise and a challenge that I find very satisfying to do.
And where do you live at the moment?
I currently live in Minneapolis, in the United States.
And so, living in Minneapolis, is that the home of Prince?
Yes, it is. Prince, yes, the home of Prince.
Okay, living at the home of Prince. How do you draw in the whole Nigerian atmosphere links, cultural ambience in order to write. In Minneapolis, which we know is supposed to be cold and dreary, we know that Prince said he just locks himself away and does it, and it makes him make the music. What would you say for you? What's your...
Well, I go to Nigeria quite often. I still have family and friends there, and so it's not so much like a dredging up or like a pulling as it is just an exploration of the world that I know. And I'm very interested. I'm interested in fantasy, science fiction, magical realism, that sort of genre, because I think that it's important not only for African writers to document, right, and to sort of document our stories. I think it's important for us to be inventive as well, and to invent and play with our histories and our cultures and our stories.
So can you tell us what your favorite African literature, your favorite book written by an African author or Caribbean author or Black American author is?
Yes, I most recently enjoyed very much My Sister the Serial Killer. And I really just love this, what feels like a new era of contemporary Nigerian literature where again, we're playing, we are at play, and I think that it feels like a heralding of something that's really important and necessary.